Good evening and welcome to Thursdays with Nami. My name is Peg Morrison. I'll be your host tonight. I am the Director of Programs with Nami, North Carolina. That's the National Alliance on Mental Illness, North Carolina. I'm glad you're here. Thursdays with Nami is our way of creating safe spaces, building conversations, and building community around the topic of mental health. May is a wonderful month that keeps us all on our toes. If you're in the family game, you've got graduation season, you've got Mother's Day. For NAMI, it's Mental Health Awareness Month. That's near and dear to our hearts here at NAMI. It's also National Women's Health Month. The idea is to honor and raise awareness of health-related issues that are important to women of all ages. It's a great reminder for us females to make our health and well-being a top priority. I don't know about you, but I need that reminder more often than once a year, but we'll take what we can get, right? I'm very jazzed about our guests tonight, Felicia Mcpherson and Suzanne Robinson. Both of these women I admire for their leadership, for their courage to just be themselves at all times in this goofy world. And they're both great storytellers. So we're going to circle back to them in just a moment. As usual, the first part of our show will be an interview with our guests. Then we will show a lighthearted video of the week, and then we'll be taking questions from you all, members of our virtual studio audience. Right now, we're going to spend just a moment thanking our funders, North Carolina, the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services, Division of Mental Health, Developmental Disabilities, and Substance Abuse Services through the Federal Community Mental Health Services Block Grant Fund. And there we go. It is a mouthful. We do appreciate their guidance and support every week. All righty. Without any further ado, I want to introduce our guest. Felicia Mcpherson began her mental health journey in 1995 at the North Carolina Correctional Institution for Women. Today, she's a licensed professional counselor in North Carolina. She's an elected executive board member for NAMI North Carolina, AKA she's my boss. And she's a resident of Fayetteville, an active leader in her local affiliate, and she hosts a local radio show, which is very cool, on advocacy, wellness, and support. Everything NAMI is on her show. Suzanne Robinson, someone I've known for many years, is the Director of National Education Programs for NAMI. Prior to joining the national team, Suzanne was Director of Programs at NAMI, Ohio for 14 years. She actually sat in that office and did that work before I did that work. And she was brave enough to try to train me in it. I was so nervous I would hit the wall after 5 minutes, and then I'd call her the next day like, what, how am I supposed to do that? So I'm always grateful. I always remember people who are so kind and help me out. And so I bestowed the gift of an invitation to our show on Suzanne Robinson. She has a bachelor's in history from Washington University and her master's in social work from The Ohio State University. Welcome, guests.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah,
Thank
I'm
you.
so glad you're both here. It's fun to be around familiar faces. Go Bucks, from Gary Kreitz, my executive director and our awesome supporter. So we won't beat around the bush. We'll jump right in. We always like to know the backstories of our guests, and you can go in whatever order you'd like. Tell us your story in a nutshell. Tell us your story.
Felicia, do you want to go ahead?
I'll let you go.
Oh, okay. Again, my name is Suzanne, and I came to NAMI back in 1998 as a volunteer for Family to Family. And then I kind of, as is typical for a lot of people, I kind of got sucked into doing more, becoming a leader, and then became staff, and then ended up at the national office. But for me, the mental health journey has been my whole life. Full confession, I am 54 years old, and my mother has bipolar disorder. So for me, it's been my whole life. Also, my younger brother has OCD, started showing signs when he was about 7. So when you add up my years of experience, I'm nearing the 100-year mark in terms of lived experience as a family member. So I grew up in a household where, things were, I didn't realize how different it was until I went to other people's houses, and their houses were often much more quiet than my house. And I'm sure this will come out as we kind of go on, but, my mother was by no means neglectful or abusive or any of those things, but it definitely was a different experience growing up with a mom who had bipolar disorder, because she had kind of the up and down moods. But for her, her bipolar disorder does not look fabulous when she's manic. It's much more she's furious when she's manic. So for her, it would be a lot of cussing and a lot of anger. But again, she was not physically or verbally abusive to us, but she would have a hard time controlling her temper. So for her, that was difficult. But her lows were very low. And I can remember as a kid, it's hard for parents to explain to a kid why mom's going to be gone for 3 weeks because she's in the hospital. Because in those days, that's the 70s, that kids did not visit psychiatric units and see their parents in the hospital. So my mom was in the hospital. My dad, the reason why we settled in Columbus, Ohio was because my parents are not from Ohio. My mom's from St. Louis and my dad's from New York City. And my father took a position as a professor at Ohio State. So I grew up running around that campus, but it also meant that my dad, while working, was sometimes both parents, because when my mom just couldn't keep up with things or just wasn't doing very well, he sort of stepped in and was both roles. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. And then again, as I say, my younger brother started showing signs of difficulty when he was about 7, initially diagnosed with depression. But when we look back now, we realize it was probably always OCD. He always had some anxiety. For him, it's not about germ phobia or counting or ordering things. It's much more about cyclical thinking. He gets caught on something and just can't let it go. And so maybe a little bit of compulsive shopping. And when he was younger, a little bit of kind of binge drinking kind of thing as a coping strategy. But it's because he's one who, if you have one, then you have 6 kind of thing. But we're very fortunate that he does very well today, and so does my mother, but it's not that every day is easy by any stretch, but they both have found ultimately, after a lot of time and trying, treatments that work. So it's kind of a big nutshell, but even so.
That's a Nami nutshell. That's a Nami nutshell. Felicia.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Thank you for having me. Again, my name is Felicia Mcpherson. I am from the big city of Spivey's Corner, North Carolina, in Sampson County, where I was born and raised. That experience, that being African-American young lady in the South, was very different. And when I say different, most classrooms, most schools, most now would have a very integrated dynamic, geographic dynamic and everything. I do believe when I graduated from Midway High School in 1987, there were a total of 10 African-American students in my class of 87, which led way to, unbeknownst to me, I had no idea of my culture. There was very little of that taught in Sampson County at that time. But lucky for me, I went to an HBCU by accident, Fayetteville State University, go Broncos, because it was the closest. There was a lot of fear of going to college. I just found out like last 3 months, I'm the first person on both sides of my parents, my maternal and paternal family, that actually graduated from college, of my grandparents. So that's a big deal for me. But in 1995, and prior to that, I was showing signs of mental challenges. And at one point, my mother actually took me to see a therapist, but when she wanted to do family counseling, that was our last session. The attitude was, fix her. She's acting out. She's not listening. She's rebelling. And of course, they didn't know I had been sexually assaulted and abused prior to. And I realized I didn't have the language. As a 12-year-old, I didn't have the language, nor did I have the confidence that I wouldn't be punished. In my mind, I knew I had done something wrong because you weren't supposed to have sex. So it was, what did I do? And honestly, Peg, my thing was, I used to get spankings for like not sweeping the floor, or not cleaning up the kitchen, or not doing the dishes and things of that nature. So it was like, if I got a spanking for not doing dishes, what am I gonna get if I tell this?
Ooh.
Yeah, that was my childlike reasoning at the time. Fast forward, I got married to an individual that I was unequally yoked to, and I had no idea anything about substance abuse, drug dealers, and everything. Like I said, I'm from Spivey's Corner. Only drug I knew about was Tylenol. But of course, by that time I was in college, so of course I knew everything. Which of course I did not. Long story short, it ended up in domestic violence. And as the oldest of three females, of the oldest of my parents' three daughters, you know, I was taught to defend myself. I was taught to defend my sisters. I mean, I fought back. I mean, you hit me, you get hit back. And in that situation, like I said, I had no idea that I was involved in domestic violence. I just thought he hit me, I hit back. And at the time, you know, it was fighting. It wasn't no locking me in the basement. It wasn't no I was getting black eyes. If anything, he was getting black eyes. So I didn't rationalize that it was domestic violence. And don't get me wrong, my mother, my aunts were like, you don't have to put up with this, yada yada. But at the same token, I'm raised in Sampson County. You're not supposed to get divorced. I'm raised in the church. So who else is going to marry me if I get divorced? I mean, it was still in the mid 80s. For me, for my family, in my area, it was still taboo. I mean, the one thing you wanted to do was get married, have kids, have a happy, marriage, be the Sunday school teacher. And I was in college. It had to work out, right? So I went straight from Fayetteville State University. I started graduate school at IUP in Pennsylvania. I was an honor student, and I went straight from grad school to the North Carolina Department of Correction in Raleigh, North Carolina, 1034 Bragg Street, from 1995 to 2006 on a domestic violence related second-degree murder charge. Of course, I was offered a plea. I turned it down. Once again, in my mind, I knew everything. I didn't do it on purpose. It was an accident.
So it was your husband? It was your husband who died?
No, ma'am. The fight was with my husband. And like I said, it was a fight. It wasn't him beating me. It was a blow to blow fight. And his mama's boyfriend jumped in to grab me. So wow. I in a bear hug, and I did one of these here numbers, but I had a kitchen knife in my right hand. And when I did like that, he was behind me, and it caught him dead in the jugular.
Ooh, wow.
At that point, yeah, lucky me, right? One wound, no defensive marks, less than an inch in, but again, it caught the jugular. And he ran behind me, collapsed, lost so much blood that he died.
Oh my goodness.
Then I was at my outlaws, not in-laws. I was at my outlaws property. So it was, their word against mine. I really had no one to testify on my behalf of the incident. But once again, I never drank, never smoked, had no kids, was in grad school, and went straight to the North Carolina Department of Correction. I had a court-appointed lawyer. Ooh. Once again, Sampson County, me and the logic of my parents and I was, the court-appointed attorney paid by our taxes. So we've already paid for a lawyer. So I paid for another. And of course, with God on my side and telling the truth, of course it's going to work out, right? Of course. Like I said, it was, in hindsight, people say it's not what you know, it's who you know. And I have learned so much from my associations with people that know more, that have more diverse backgrounds. At that time, I didn't have that. At that time, I didn't affiliate with the Peg Morrisons and the Gary Crites and the David Smiths of the world. I didn't know anybody with the wisdom in this area. Once again, we were going on faith and truth. Because of course, like I said, I had no intention on harming whatsoever. But again, and I didn't even get arrested that day. I got arrested like a couple of days later. So that in itself was trauma. It was absolute trauma because once again, I was a good girl. I didn't drink, I didn't smoke, I didn't have any kids. I went to college. I can't go to prison. And my was with the plea bargain. I'm like, no, if you're going to send me to prison, you're going to send me to prison. I'm not voluntarily going. I'm not signing myself in. You have to send me. And that's what they did.
Oh my goodness.
That's what they did. And Peg, in all actuality, to quote, my father told me later on as they were visiting me that the DA actually said to him, and I quote, "We have one dead nigger and we have an educated nigger. We ain't got to worry about voting." So guess who they didn't have to worry about voting? Yeah, by not signing the plea, I upset the DA. And like I said, I didn't know the political realms of what I was facing and what I was dealing with. And of course, my court-appointed lawyer wasn't very helpful. I was sentenced for 35 years, state time, my first time being incarcerated in Raleigh, North Carolina. I was a long-termer. And as a long-termer of a violent crime, you must have, it's mandatory that you have a mental health assessment.
Wow.
Yes. So that was my very first assessment. My first diagnosis was antisocial disorder, depression, and PTSD. And once again, I was given these diagnoses without any explanation. And once again, I'm incarcerated. Now I'm quote unquote crazy. It's written down. I'm 25 years old. Who's going to want me?
Wow.
And I actually, like I said, the first couple of visits with my mom and my parents, I asked them, do y'all have insurance on me? I had planned suicide off top. 25 years old, you just gave me 35 years. Nah, I'm not gonna stay here until I'm 60. I'm good. Yeah, I'll just walk to the fence and let them kill me. I mean, I was that hopeless. That hopeless. I was that devastated. There was no such thing as recovery in my mind at that time. I didn't know what to do with what I was facing. And of course, my mom was like, "I'm gonna be right here." And I'm like, "You're not gonna be alive in 35 years either." So, I mean, once again, the way my mind was processing it.
Yeah.
That was my truth.
Yeah.
But through her prayers and actually through the chaplaincy, and I'll always shout out the chaplaincy at NCCIW, because again, that's where my hope came from. They had programming. We were allowed to do things. Hey, we even had a fashion show in there.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. And of course, I started going to therapy. Right. And we had groups, open-ended groups, substance abuse, incest, anger management. And what was I good at? School. What was I good at? Groups and interaction. And I needed it. I needed something on an academic level. Pay, when I tell you from 1995 to 2006, I have certificates from Wake County, the technical school, for horticulture, nail tech, cosmetology, travel agency, dental lab, horticulture, anything that put me in a classroom.
Yeah.
Because being that I already had my bachelor's when I went in, I wasn't allowed to take the Shaw University bachelor's program, nor were they fund a master's program. But that was my outlet. That was my, besides, other than books, of course. Fast forward, I came home in December the 20th, 2006. Again, I went straight from high school to undergrad to graduate school to prison. I never had a full-time job in my life. From 1995 to 2006, I had no contacts. I had never been on a cell phone. I had never been on a computer.
You were in for 10 years?
Almost 12, almost a decade.
Okay.
Okay.
Wow. Well, so much of your story resonates because I think so many people grow up and don't have language for the negative experience that they're going through and don't have a way of communicating. I mean, you've never been introduced to those words, to that world. much less the opportunity to advocate for yourself. And both of you had, in very different ways, childhoods that had some chaos and had some, having the rug pulled out from under you in those ways. Also really related to your comment about divorce. I was divorced in 2004, and I was the only one in my family of 6 kids. Now there are 3 of us, thank goodness, so I don't feel alone. Right. So both of you mentioned some dark days. How did you lift out of those dark days? What did that for you? Let's go back to Suzanne real quick, or not so quick.
I think, I think back, as I said, when I think one of the things that my parents did really well was speak openly about it. So they really told us, mommy's upset, but she's not upset at you. And somehow they were convincing when they said that. And I think that made all the difference for us, because I think that's one of the challenges when people don't talk about it, or kind of like what Felicia said, when you don't feel like there's anybody you can safely tell if you've experienced a traumatic event, or if you're feeling unsure of yourself, or you're feeling kind of overwhelmed and you're not quite sure why, especially like you said, when you're a younger kid. My mom, because of her own experience, watched us so carefully just to see what's happening. Because I know for her, she's talked about the fact that she really wanted all of this to stop with her. And when my brother developed obsessive compulsive disorder, that was really devastating for her, because she just thought, it went on to the next generation, and I didn't want that to happen. But I've said this before, even though my mother has bipolar disorder, I don't have it, nor does my brother. But we're both keenly aware that because it's in our family history with my mother and others in the family, a lot of people who are very creative, very energetic, have a bit of depression or melancholy or whatever you want to call it, or bipolar disorder, we're keenly aware of what it means to have bipolar disorder or OCD in 2021 versus when you go back a ways. Because my great grandmother was institutionalized after the age of about 50. So that's my mom's grandmother. So my maternal great grandmother was in an institution. She had bipolar as well, but there were just no treatments available at that point. So that was the option. And
Wow.
because people couldn't figure out how to safely have this person at home, that's the option you had. And that, and it depended on what kind of resources you had as to what type of facility you would be in. So I think about even my mom in the time that she's been treated, because I'll tell you, as I said, she's 80. Well, I don't know if I said that. She's 83 years old now. And her parents took her to a psychiatrist when she was 3.5. So something was going on early in terms of the way she behaved and her temperament and all of that. And they had no idea what they were dealing with. So they took her to a psychiatrist. I'm not sure what kind of help they got. She wasn't put on any medication, but she wasn't diagnosed until until she had that hospitalization. So it was, she had children, but my parents had also moved to Ohio. So they didn't really have a support network. So it was really my mom and dad figuring it all out. So I think in terms of dark days, like I said, I think it's when my mom was hospitalized. But again, because my parents were always so open about it, and it was dinner table talk for us. And I'm so grateful for that, because I think that has made all the difference in sort of this idea, there's no shame in talking about this. But I don't walk up to people and say, "Hi, I'm Suzanne. We have a touch of bipolar in the family. How are you?" I don't do that, but I also don't hide anything. And if people are making jokes about things or just sort of using flippant language, because, with my brother having OCD, you have people who say, they just use terms in the wrong way. Like, "Oh, that's such a schizophrenic approach to writing," or, "Oh, I have a touch of OCD, ha, ha, ha." And sometimes I'll be kinder about it and just say, "I don't think so." Or I'll say, "I really hope you don't." And they'll be like, "Yeah, because my brother has it and it's not fun." And they're, oh. And so I try when I talk about it, I try and have a bit of a sense of humor, but I also take it seriously, because it is serious. And it's much more serious for people who don't have the incredible privilege I have. Because I think about your story, Felicia, and had you been a white woman, what's the outcome? Completely different. If you were a white woman in a northern state, a really different outcome. And have a couple of different resources, or have a lawyer that isn't court appointed. It's just such a difference. And I think about what incredible privilege I have, and the privilege that my family has, because my dad had state teachers insurance. So he had decent access. But we're also really fortunate that my mother and brother both have responded to treatment, because I also know that's a factor for people too. So I am unbelievably grateful for all those privileges, but understand that not everyone has those opportunities, but also people can have all those opportunities, all the wealth and riches in the world, and still not have a good outcome in terms of response to treatment, getting the treatment, getting the right diagnosis, all these things. And I think, just kind of as Felicia said, there are so many factors that play into this about what might be sort of root causes of things. And I think too often our system has responded in sort of like, what's wrong with you? As opposed to, what happened? How can I help? Let me listen to you so I better understand and I find the best option for you. And as I say, I think, we've certainly had bumpy roads and not great providers over time. But I think that, dark days for us again was mom's hospitalization. But I think the light came from how supportive my parents were of each other and of us, of my brother and me, and kind of keeping an eye out for us. So I think
That's what did it. That makes a lot of sense to me, because both of you really have a refreshing way of being candid and just, I'm just a very nonchalant way of being very open and transparent, and it's empowering. I think you give the people around you permission to feel what they feel and think what they think, but without even realizing it probably sometimes. So yeah, I can definitely see that. And Felicia, you were circling to the part of your story where you transitioned out of some dark times. Tell us about that.
Actually, like I said, prior to the almost decade I spent in there was an extreme part of the dark days. And I don't know if it ever comes to your mind, when people get time or are incarcerated, they're given a parole date or a release date. While I was there, 3 women died.
Ooh.
So can you imagine what that meant to me, knowing I may not go home? My life very well may end right here. That was a realization that was very dark for me. No matter how much I actually did have to look forward to, because when I say my mom gave me hope, my mom was always hopeful. She was there every other Sunday. My family came, my uncles, my cousins, friends from college. But at the same token, they all left me there. So with the joy of not being forgotten, I saw the pictures of people getting married, people having kids, people growing up. Children that I left, that I babysitted, were writing me, talking about their kids. So that was a lot, because once again, time was going on, the world was going on without me. Coming home, reconnecting, like I said, by the time I got home, and this story tickles everybody, I'm in the Walmart parking lot and I'm hearing this beeping and I'm like, oh my God, they blowing at me. Oh, they were locking their car doors.
That's so mysterious.
Who knew? And yeah, I mean, things that you guys take for granted, or that would have meant anything to you guys. Or I'm driving down the road and I see this blue flicker in somebody's car. It's their Bluetooth in their ear. I didn't know what that was. And that in itself made me feel like an alien, made me feel alienated, led to isolation, because I was different. Who knew who was going to judge me? What was they going to think about me? And again, at this time, I'm 35, 37 years old, no kids, I'm single. Nobody wants to grow old alone. How do you network when you don't know anybody? And everybody's so far advanced from you. Luckily, once again, and this was only by the grace of God, that people in my life, certain people, and you say that I tell my story in a way that people can, in a transparency. I've got to, I learned that through peer support. I learned that through the fact that God knows it all. So why am I hiding it from Peg? If Peg is going to judge me, if Peg is not going to like me because I went to prison, do I really want to be Peg's friend anyway? Because I can't change my past. There's absolutely nothing I can do about it. And I know in my heart is I'm not a murderer, regardless of what my criminal background report says. And then I went to a spiritual place. How many people have you killed with your tongue, with your words, with your actions, or that you continue to kill? So that was dark for me. Reconnecting, putting myself out there, just being honest. And once again, that was a blessing because I landed in Cumberland County, JFAP program, which was ran by retired military vets. Oh my gosh. You tell a vet you need some help and it's over. They used all their resources. They taught me because once again, I never had a job. I never had a full-time job. So they taught me the way they knew. They had me at the office 30 minutes early. You dress like this, you talk like this, you sit like this, you greet like this. I mean, but they did it in a manner that did not belittle me at all, but only elevated me. And my father's a vet. My father's a military vet. So once again, that kinship, that's all they needed to know. That's all they needed to know. And we were off to the races. But once again, I graduated from Fayetteville State in 1991. I had absolutely no opportunity to pay back any of my student loans, which were currently in default. I was 6 hours short of my master's. How am I going to take care of myself? I'm single. My parents can't take care of me. Don't get me wrong, they did the best they could helping me financially, but you can't give me what you don't have. And once again, I'm a grown woman. So at that point, at that juncture, I had to ask for help. And I received it. But I tell you, to this day, Peg, those vets went to Fayetteville State. I don't know what they did, how they did it, who they talked to, but they came back with my transcript. I got my transcript, and I got into grad school. And they said, the way you're going to pay us back is you're going to graduate. And you're going to graduate with honors. Those same vets, Peg, they didn't recommend me for my first peer support job. Peg, they went with me. When I tell you, they said, we're recommending her. They sat beside me in the interview and said, we have taught her. You can trust her. We're putting our reputation on the line. Hire her. Because I had never heard of a peer support specialist, of course. And I'm like, my lived experience makes me qualified for employment. The fact that I've been incarcerated for almost a decade. And they're like, who else can connect better? And I'm like, I had no idea, Peg, that the groups I was in while incarcerated, so it was a 6-month group. The end of the 6 months, who's still there? And at that point, we had therapists that were coming straight in from grad school that had never really been in the field long, of course, because the state won't pay any money. And it was an influx of young women. Our population at the prison went from 300 to 800 in less than 2 years. And the demographic went from an average age of 30 to 20. So you've got these young, angry, brown women coming in, and Peg, you got a therapist looking like you, and she's 25, and they're looking at her like, you can't tell me nothing. And they were like, Felicia, help. We can't even, talk about therapy or talk about coping skills because they're so angry and there's no connection. I became a peer support specialist and didn't even know it.
Sounds
Because once again, I'm sitting there when they're like, you don't know what it's like. I do. And I've been through this course, and let me tell you what you can get out of it. And for me, that was hopeful. I was doing something. I was helping. Because a lot of those groups were mandatory for some ladies, but it wasn't for me. But yet I didn't realize the therapy and the growth that it was being poured into me as I was pouring out. Peg, when I came home, we want to talk about dark days. It wasn't that dark. Once I started connecting, and once I started, I was a peer support specialist. I was on an ACT team. I was on a CST team. Nami decided that I could do in our own voice, and they actually paid me. So I'm like, what? I get to talk to handsome officers, CIT officers, and I get paid. Life is grand. I'm almost finished with my master's program. And once again, in NAMI, I became CIT coordinator, secretary, vice president of one of the largest chapters in the state, Durham affiliate. And on June 12, 2014, I got burnt in a car fire.
Ooh.
I spent 6 months in a coma, 9 months in the burn center. I was burned 70% of my body, second and third degree burns. And according to the medical staff at the UNC Burn Center, I'm not supposed to be alive. My kidneys shut down, my body function shut down. They said I was burning from the inside out. They gave me 72 hours to live. If I lived through the first 72 hours, I had a 30% chance of making it. But of course, I'd never talk, walk, or again, they were preparing my family to put me in assisted living. So guess who come out the coma and want to know whether the hours I sent in for my licensure had went through or not?
Wow. You just
I
came
could
through
not
like
conceive. I could not conceive anything other than hope or recovery. By this point in my life, Peg, I have been exposed so much to wellness, so much to peer support, so much to getting my natural supports together and progressing, that's all I could actually process. Even not being able to walk, talk, move, anything, it was like, I know good and well I ain't came this far, and I'm not gonna be a therapist. I know good and well I haven't lived through all that, and I got to go to assisted living facility. Oh, no, ma'am, no, ma'am. I mean, Peg, I was in denial to the point. No, my faith was so strong to the point that even when it was time for them to put a permanent stent in me for dialysis, I refused it. I am no longer on dialysis, Peg. I am drinking water every day, all day. My kidney function is great. But I've got to admit, from 2014 to now, there were a lot of dark days.
My goodness.
Learning how to walk again, learning how to talk again, accepting the fact that my body does not look like it used to. Having children look at me and ask what happened, having adults look at me and ask what happened. Peg, the time it took for me to actually wash my body and look at it. Not that I couldn't physically wash it. I didn't want to look at it. So those were dark days. But when I tell you I had people, my network was so strong by the time I got burned. When I tell you Dorothy Smith, vice president of the Durham affiliate at the time, came into the hospital, the only thing they could touch was my feet. That's the only thing that wasn't burned. Dorothy put socks on my feet.
Oh my goodness.
So that love, that connection, that hope, I just had to. I didn't know how, I didn't know when, but I just knew it. In my mind, I knew it, and it manifested. My nephrologist said he had never taken anybody off on dialysis before. I said, well, God can, and can you hurry up? Because I got something to do.
Oh my goodness.
So of course, like I said, I'm fully licensed. And even with that, I mean, being on disability for years, being on, food stamps. I mean, I have a master's degree and I'm on disability. I go from a salary of over $40,000 to less than $1,000 a month. those were dark days, man. I was used to traveling. I was used to the Tom Joyner cruise. I was used to pulling out my passport whenever I got ready. But I was making my trip to UNC Chapel Hill week. I didn't know. Those were dark days, Peg. Those were very dark days. But once again, I had my church. I had my cruise family. I had my school family. I had my Bronco family. I had people that said, if anybody can do it, you can. And I'm looking at them like, you talking about me?
Mm-hmm.
And it happened. It happened, and it's still happening. I just bought my first home.
That's right.
And I love it.
And that's very recent, right?
Yeah. Yes, I just moved in January.
Yeah.
But and I lost my mom in 2018. But once again, she taught me how to pray, and she taught me how to believe, and she taught me, regardless of who likes me, who don't like me, what I've done, what people think I've done, I've still got something to do. I'm still here. So I'm still worth something. A lot of times, Peg, we wrestle with worth. What are we worth? Or if we're worth anything. And if I don't have this and I don't have that, I can't be worth anything because everybody else has got it and they've got to be better than me. So those were my dark days, Peg. Those were the days that regardless of what degree I had, regardless of what country I had been to, regardless of who I knew or who I didn't know, I still had to deal with me and learning to love me or to like me or to look at me in the mirror.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, Felicia, since we've met, I've thought of you as a force of nature, and I didn't really know why why that light glows so strong, but now I have a better sense. And I have to say it's wonderful that you are your beautiful, deep self because of what you've been through, but I hate what it took. I hate that you suffered at such a young age with trauma that no child should ever even have to think about, much less live with, and not having the language and not being able to ask for help and thinking it was your fault. I relate to that. And then, as Suzanne mentioned, when being in an abusive or domestic violence situation and how different it would have been. I mean, it was clearly, as you describe it, self-defense. At least a case should have been made for that. And the statistics on sentencing by race are obscene. We know that. So I just want to honor you and commend you for all that you've done. And that's coming through in the chat box as well. So I have a lot of respect for you. I love that you can be just like gritty, candid, but you can also be like church eloquent. So yeah, so let's go with the story. We'll start with Felicia, of how Nami came to be part of your life.
Well, as I said, I became a peer support specialist on an ACT team and looking for resources. Of course, which comes up, Nami.
Okay.
What's Nami? And once I started supporting the members in the community to go to Nami, to go to peer-to-peer, to go to family, I'm like, wait a minute, this applies to me. And once again, meeting different Nami members in the Durham affiliate, they were like, who are you? And when I told them who I was, they were like, oh, well, what do you think about doing In Our Own Voice? And I'm like, what voice? And then they told me about the little stipend that went with it, and I found my voice. And like I said, once again, you want me to help officers? CIT? You want me to? And a lot of officers to this day tell me, we never know what a person looks like post-crisis. We don't know what happens to people that are sentenced and are gone for a decade and a half. How do we know? And once again, there's a stigma in that bed. There's a lot of women in the community now that I did time with that do not tell anybody they've ever been incarcerated. Because of the stigma of whether it's expunged or not. But my thing is, how do you dismiss 3, 5, 12, 20 years of your life? or the friendships that you have made. And they are friendships made while incarcerated. Because we spent Christmases together. We spent Mother's Day together. You were there when my niece was born. But you don't know me anymore. You can't associate with me anymore because I don't hide the fact that I've been incarcerated. I mean, once again, I turned that stumbling block into a stepping stone. Because once again, that lived experience, that diagnosis, those sessions of therapy led me to my career. Mm-hmm. And once I started working in the field and working with people with mental health challenges and their families, and seeing the disconnect sometime in therapy, or seeing the unwillingness to talk to the therapist, or the therapist don't know that I don't want to take that medication because of how it makes me feel, or because it'll blow me up and or it makes me drowsy and I can't sleep and I want to go to work. But if they're not listening to the member, the family doesn't know how to advocate. There's a disconnect if it's supposed to be person-centered. And I often wondered, what would it be like if my therapist knew? If my therapist had been incarcerated? If my therapist had been on Medicaid? If my therapist let me know that she had been raped or he had been raped, or that their life wasn't peachy keen? And no, it's not that I go into my sessions disclosing, but I go into my sessions with a level of understanding and a willingness to listen, because I know what it's like not to have been heard, which puts me in a category of therapies like no other. Because once again, I do know the power of peer power. I do know the power of advocacy. I do know the power of natural supports. I know what it means to say, who is your circle? Whether it's your pastor, whether it's your cousin, whether it's the sister or your ex-boyfriend, who pours into you, who helps you. Let's write this rap plan. Let's use this rap. Do you know what a rap is? Do you know how valuable it is? My rap got me through my burn stage, because I had a rap, because I had Dorothy, David, Pearlie, I had Deborah, I had people I could say, this ain't easy. I need help. I'm not going to make it. I'm feeling suicidal. I don't like myself. I had a rap and I activated it.
And so for people who don't know, that's a wellness recovery action plan. Yep. And you are a certified rapper.
Yes, certified rapper.
Wow, that is powerful stuff. So lot to unpack there. I'm so glad that you had that preparation for something that could happen to any of us any day, and would be devastating to any of us. So you've come so far. And I know for Suzanne, with your connection with Nami, it was your mother. How did she find Nami, or how did your family find it?
There were a group, oddly enough, of professors' families. They were all connected to Ohio State. A lot of them, several of them were in my dad's department, like I said, Slavic languages. So my dad taught Russian and Lithuanian and all this sort of thing. But there were professors right there who had people in their family who had mental health conditions. So there was this little group that helped to start my home affiliate, Nami Franklin County, which is still going today. So my mom was involved in that. And I joke about how did I get started in NAMI? My mother made me do it. She said, Susie, we need more teachers for this program called Family to Family. I want you to do it. And I had just moved back to Ohio, and I said, okay. And I didn't really know what I was getting into, but it's been one of the great joys of my life, because I think that I always find that in meeting other people, hearing where they are, helping them find each other, is just, I mean, there's magic that happens in it. And all we're doing is sitting around in a circle with a binder with paper in it. And while I do believe the materials are really important, I think it's the human connection that's been the most important part. just that opportunity to share with each other. And I think the difference it makes when somebody comes into that classroom, because I'm thinking particularly of the family programs, which is what I'm connected to, NAMI Basics, NAMI Family to Family, NAMI Homefront. When somebody comes in there and kind of hanging their head saying, you know, my son has schizophrenia, or my husband has bipolar disorder. And you're like, oh my gosh, well, my sister has it. Come sit here, talk to me. And they're, whoa, what is this? What is this strange thing where you're just so open about this? And I know someone was talking about kind of some of the cultural aspects of this. And I remember there's a very dear friend of mine who came to probably the second class I ever taught, African-American woman, had a daughter with bipolar disorder. And her daughter became really symptomatic after about class 2. And I sent Tracy a note, didn't know her very well, sent her a card, just said, you know, Tracy, I know it's so hard for you right now with Tova, but if you ever need us, we'll be here. I hope you can come to a class in the future. And it's so funny because we became the closest of friends. And she, every once in a while, she'll send me a picture of that card because she still has it. We were strangers, 2 weeks of a relationship. And I've got a card from her right up on my bulletin board up here. But I think you make these lifelong connections, and it's not because, you know, any of the stuff that NAMI did was so amazing. It's just that NAMI creates the space for people to connect. And I think that is, I mean, I'll never get through it because I never do without getting all weepy, but I'll try. Just an example. Family to family class has 10-minute breaks during the class. We had a class, probably it's the second or third class I ever taught, probably the third one. And we had a couple in there who had a daughter with bipolar disorder. The daughter was 19. The daughter had become pregnant. She didn't want to be pregnant. She was doing an awful lot of drugs to not be pregnant. And so this couple was thinking, we're going to be raising this baby. We have no idea what to expect. And quite frankly, we've never had a baby before, because they were parents, kind of came to parenting later in life, adopted 2 special needs children. One was this girl. They were probably 7 and 8 when they were adopted. So they had a son and a daughter. And so they'd never raised a baby. They never had any of this stuff. So they were just telling their story in class 3, kind of explaining, you know, what they were experiencing. And I remember a gal in my class came to me right after that break that day and just said, Suzanne, I think we should have a baby shower during break next week. And I thought, oh, what baby shower takes 10 minutes? No baby shower takes 10 minutes. But what just gets me is, and I'll do it again, they bought the big stuff. They bought the car seat. You know, and that's just the kind of stuff that happens in NAMI Connection, because these were strangers. The connection was mental health, but this couple, they didn't know how to deal with babies. And there were other people in the class that did. So they're sitting here thinking, we're going to get you the onesies. We're going to get you the diapers. We're going to get you the nice car seat. We're going to get you the high chair. And they did it all. So naturally, our break went longer than 10 minutes. But since I used to manage the program, I forgive myself, whatever. But I think that those are those unexpected, magical moments that happen because people connect. And I just think, you know, this couple too, they were so touched because they said, we didn't have baby showers when we adopted these children. They were young. They were in elementary school age. And it was like, what in the world is that? But that's the kind of stuff, and it happens all the time. And that's one of many stories where people just, they connect. And I know we try and just create that opportunity and create that space for people to find folks who understand and can relate and can help each other. And I think anytime I hear from people when they say, oh, too hard to do these classes, oh, we'll never get it started, oh, Peg knows, because in Ohio, I don't want to hear it, because in Ohio, we have Amish teachers, okay? There are people teaching this class by kerosene lamplight in an outbuilding on property. So I don't want to hear it. In the dead of winter, going by buggy or ski to get to that class. So it doesn't take a lot of money. It doesn't take anything fancy. It's people with heart and willing to share their story. And I think that's the key. It's a lot what you're seeing with Felicia too. Your willingness to share your story, all the ugly parts, all the beautiful parts, all of it, the whole you, the authentic you is what makes the difference. And I think that's the magic of NAMI, is people kind of say that's the special sauce. It's that opportunity to share all those parts of you in great honesty, and it just makes
Yeah,
such a
yeah, don't go.
difference.
Hey, Felicia, you look like you have something to add.
No, I concur. I really do, because once again, it's that human connection. And we have very limited resources here in Cumberland and Lee County. But the heart, the willingness, and people know when you're sincere. Speaking of sincerity, it's Nami walk time. And about 3 years ago, while I was soliciting funds, because it's our biggest fundraiser, I went to WIDU, one of our local radio affiliates, with Wes and Sandy Cookman. They were transitioning at the time from AM to FM, I'm not badly mistaken. And they were like, our funds are limited, but how about we give you some time? And I'm like, what? We have been on WIDU the last Monday in every month for almost 3 years now, for absolutely free. We have become a part of the WIDU family. And every month we are allowed an hour, 60 minutes of airtime to talk about mental wellness, mind, body, and soul, anything Nami. And Nami has connected. We have connected. We're part of the community in that aspect. So like she said, it's the willingness. It's the willingness to connect. It's the willingness to make it happen. And it will happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. And I think so many of us are from families and communities where it's just not okay to talk about certain things, feelings, trauma. It's the way our parents and older generations were raised. It's just not okay. And so,
okay, who wants to be known as crazy, Pig? I mean, nobody wants to be. I mean, it's better to be an alcoholic, a drug addict. I mean, anything but crazy. When I actually came home and started working as a peer support specialist and was explaining it to some of my family members, I actually got the comment of, they hiring the crazy to look after the crazy. That was their interpretation of what my job was. The stigma is real, and it's very real in the African-American community. You can have a bad day, or you can be down, or but you can't be depressed, because what's wrong with you? You evidently you're not. Your faith isn't strong. And I love. I'm a very proud member of one church, Covenant here in Cumberland County, and the thing, one of our mission statements that's inbred in our mission statement, you can have a therapist and a pastor. You some things need therapy, God, and medication. So I mean, mind, body, and soul. It's not a disconnect. And it's nothing to be frowned upon. The brain is an organ. I mean, it's not well, what are you supposed to do? Ignore it?
Yes.
You wouldn't know, ignore it if your heart wasn't well. If your kidney's not well, you're not going to ignore it. Mm-hmm. So why ignore the fact that your brain is not well?
Yeah, well, it's been a huge disconnect in our culture and most cultures for decades, centuries. But yeah, that's an excellent statement against stigma and the damage it can do, and how debilitating it is, how it turns us all into, I want to say mute, but that's not the right word. It's like we just we could be discussing and sharing 100% of ourselves and our experience, and instead we're down to 6 or 7% because that's what's socially acceptable, and that's what doesn't push fear buttons in other folks. And so we all feel isolated. It's kind of a vicious circle. I want to take just a minute to transition. This is the part of the show where we show our video of the week. And I love our video of the week this time. It's got this force of nature, Felicia Mcpherson, that we're going to show off. I first want to thank the folks who are working behind the scenes. We're very grateful to Patience Gregg. This is her last night of helping us out on the chat box as part of an intern. Thank you so much for that, patients. Psychiatric nurse Gail Pruitt helping out in the chat box and Facebook Live, and Executive Director Gary Kreitz for always being there with us. And of course, thank you so very much to our two guests, Suzanne and Felicia, for sharing your time and your stories with us. You both are awesome. All right, so this is an example of the aforementioned WIDU program. I just love this. Let me make sure my volume's up so y'all can hear it. Okay. Let's do this thing.
We now go into the WIDU community room for Nami.
Good morning, WIDU family, as well as my Facebook Live family. Welcome to the Black History edition of Recovery Advocates, Nami, Cumberland, Harnett, and Lee County. We have a very special edition for you guys today. We're talking about wellness on all levels, mental, physical, as well as faith-based. Yes, our wellness includes our faith. My special guest this morning, as you all know, Ms. Hannah Kerr, our president of Cumberland, Harnett, and Lee County. Good morning, Hannah.
Good
How
morning,
are you doing?
Felicia.
Hannah, introduce yourself. And you know I've got to tell everybody that you are a retired president that we refuse to let go. We actually had Hannah's retirement party about 2 years ago. Little did she know she won't go nowhere. Good morning, Hannah. Thanks for joining us.
I just got such a kick out of that. And of course, shout out to Hannah Carroll, still the president of Nami, Cumberland, Harnett, and Lee counties in perpetuity as far as we are concerned. So right on. Now, virtual studio audience, we are going to take questions from you. If you have them, please type them into the Q&A box. I've seen lots of questions in the chat, and we'll try to answer those, but they scroll away and they're hard to find. If you put them in the Q&A box, it's much easier for us to address your questions. And so I took notes on a couple. One was saying to Felicia, so she's in the Hispanic Latinx community and there's no discussion of mental health issues. Is it the same in the Black community?
Yes, very much so. It is still heavily laden with stigma, very much so. Or you are looked as less than if you do admit it, because you're not strong enough. Your faith, you didn't pray through it, or what's wrong? Like I said, what's wrong with you? Not what happened to you, not what trauma are you dealing with no support.
Right. Yeah, and that goes back to your quote that was so well received and resonated with a lot of people here. It shouldn't be what's wrong with you, but what's happened to you and how can I help? Mm-hmm. So I really like that. Or maybe Suzanne said that. Somebody said that and it was really well said.
Well, my thing is, I mean, it's like if it happened to you, what did you do? What role did you play in it?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a fair question too. You got to have some ownership depending on the type of trauma you're talking about.
But that's what I'm saying. That's normally what people, that's the backlash. That's the backlash. That's the
pushback that you get. How is it actually your fault? Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. Because, if you got raped, what were you wearing? Where were you at?
Yeah.
What time? Why were you out with that person? Or
Yeah. How did you provoke that situation?
Exactly.
Yeah. And this question is probably more to Suzanne. This person has a friend who would like to participate in NAMI programs, but doesn't want to reveal their identity. Is it possible to participate without sharing who you are?
I did answer that in the chat, but I think I have had people take the class and maybe if they're in person, they just put their first name, maybe their last initial on there. I think, and it may depend on how registration happens within the affiliate. They may ask for a little more detail, but that doesn't mean that you have to share that level of detail. I will say that in a Zoom class, it's a little easier to maintain anonymity, because what we don't want is people to come in, well, I like to call them looky-loos. We are not in the zoo. It is not for people to come observe and not participate at all. So it's not that, but we welcome people to come on their own terms, because it's not so much that they're necessarily ashamed, but we also know that in these times, they may be in a household where their loved one doesn't know that they're attending a mental health support group or class, or maybe they don't have that permission, or maybe who they are in the community makes them feel like they've got to be a little bit careful with this. And they may not have permission to share this information. So I have told people that it's a little easier to maybe have that anonymity if you're doing a Zoom class on a platform, because I can create, if you've got a Gmail account, any of us can create a free Gmail account. You can create one just for Nami, just for one-time use if you want to. You can have 15 email accounts if you can keep up with them, but you can create that and you don't have to share what your name is in the in-person class. I will tell you, I know Peg was going to ask me a little bit about the Homefront program. We have a program that's for military veteran families called Homefront. And we've been actually offering that one online long before COVID, since 2015. That is the space where we've always been able to help active duty families, because an active duty family is not going to come to an in-person class for fear of risking someone's career. We've had NAMI Homefront taught on Fort Bragg, right there in North Carolina, and Fort Leonard Wood in Missouri, on base in, I think, Utah as well, but never had active duty families come to the in-person. However, online, it's a different deal, because I'm Suzanne from Ohio, but maybe in my online class, I'm not lying about my story, but I'm going to tell you I'm Cindy from Iowa, because maybe that's the safe way for me to do it. And the other part of this too, it kind of speaks to Felicia's story about how sometimes we are not in safe places. Sometimes it is not safe for me to tell you my full name, because I may be in a relationship that is not safe for me. And if it is found out that I have done this, I could be in real trouble at home. So we want to make sure that people are safe and able to participate fully. We have people who go to these Zoom classes and they're sitting in their car in a parking lot, hiding out, because that's the way they can get the help they need. So I say, come one, come all, and find the best way for you to do it.
Right. Yeah, we've had similar experiences with our online support groups, where sometimes someone is in an abusive situation or just not an accepting, supportive situation, and they won't talk, but they'll type in the chat box and they'll get responses that way.
Yep. And I know we've had the same thing. There was a gal who took our class she had a long history of being stalked by her ex. So she was extremely careful about the footprint she left anywhere. So, but she was able to participate fully, but she just had to do it and make sure she was kind of more private about it. So, yep.
Right. Exactly. So let's see what we've got. So Felicia, why don't you tell us, I don't see a question in the Q&A, and one thing I wanted to ask you about was the conference that you're participating in, put on by the North Carolina Division of Health and Human Services. I love the title of it. Tell us about that.
Dimpers Gaskew and I, Dimpers Gaskew, who is another NAMI elected executive board member, is a very, very special young man. Him and I both have experiences with incarceration or police involvement. And we are actually going to present at the One Recovery. I do believe it's the 12th annual. Annual One Recovery. It's a statewide conference, and I am so excited. Have you registered?
I have, and the title of it is How to Forgive Yourself When Society Doesn't Forgive You. I just love that.
Yes, because it is something that you may have to do in a way that it's mandatory, but how do you do it if you don't know how? How do you get over something that society say you've got to wear for the rest of your life, or something that you actually have to deal with? Because even though my crime is over 20 years. I'm my charge happened in 1995, 20 years from now. I still, when I was trying to run an apartment, ran into that barrier. Regardless of what my credit score was, regardless of how much money I made, the fact that I was a convicted felon blocked that. Or once again, I have people in my life that hold my past against me. So how do you no longer say or no longer accept the title of being a black sheep of the family? How do you take that off, keep it off, and move forward and keep your head up and have a peace and a joy? Nobody taught us that, Peg. Nobody taught me. There was no therapy class. There was no post-incarceration. To this day, I haven't had the opportunity of having a class anywhere that teaches me as an individual that was formerly incarcerated how to forgive myself, whether I meant to do it or not. And I like to say that, and we all have our goals. We all have things we strive to do. Like I said, I had it down pat. You don't drink, you don't smoke, you don't have any kids, you go to college. That's it. That's it. That's got to be the formula. But what happens when it's not? What happens when you get a diagnosis? What happens when you get a charge? What happens when your life is interrupted and nobody is there with the answers of how to put it back together again or how to get back on track on the inside? I had to forgive myself for a lot of things, whether anybody else forgave me or not. And I don't have to go to different people and say, Peg, I need you to forgive me for this, that, and the other. You don't have a heaven or a hell to put me in, so why do I have to? I had to get it right here. I had to get it right with my high power and move forward in my own strength, in my own wellness, in my own recovery, in my own mind.
I love that.
It's gonna be a great workshop.
I am really looking forward to it. And I know, I live with depression, anxiety, and I have my own baggage, which is very different from yours, but I have that struggle with sort of forgiveness and letting go. And I tell myself, if you want to create new neural pathways in your brain and move into a more positive place, you have to look forward. You can't always be looking back. And on a related note, someone pointed out to me that if you're grateful every day, grateful, your amygdala and your gratitude center of the brain, whatever that is, can't be active at the same time. But it's so hard. It's like I'm pulling myself out of a pit of tar every morning, honestly.
But that's okay, Peg. Once you learn what those strings are. There's a and I will definitely share it with you later. There is a song in the African American community that is actually called Grateful. It actually goes grateful, 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 grateful. And like you said, if you can get up every morning and think of the things you are grateful for. I mean, even during this pandemic, Peg, I'm working from home. I have a home. I don't have to go anywhere and do my job. And I'm like, woo, okay, pandemic ain't so bad. But even in hindsight, it's like I'm used to being in a cell by myself. I've done this already. But now I've got cable, I got my refrigerator, I got air conditioning. I mean, wow. Look at the preparation. Look at what it led me to. This pandemic wasn't that hard for me because I'm used to being by myself. Or I'm used to being in a cell. I mean, and once again, once I look at that glass in a different way. Because a lot of people aren't used to sitting still, aren't used to not being able to go anywhere. That ain't my situation. I'm used to walking around and can't go nowhere.
And to your point, Felicia, I think we're also at a point too now, glass half empty, glass half full. I don't like this glass anymore and I'm throwing it away. I'm done with this glass. Exactly. So it's sort of like, this is, I'm a grown-up person and I decide now. And to your point, I'm all about the working from home. I've been doing it for 8 years. The running joke was, Suzanne, is it no pants Tuesday? I'm like, every day is no pants Tuesday. It's yoga pants, but it's all those zippers and buttons that get really complicated now. But exactly. I think it's that idea. It's sort of like this idea that we kind of create these barriers sometimes for ourselves, sort of this internal thing. I can't do that. And then you think about it like, well, wait a minute. Why can't I do that? Who says I can't do that? No. And I have this quote, I'll go ahead and put it in.
Oh, what happened with your sound, Suzanne?
Oops, I did. I know because I hit the space bar. But I have a quote from Arthur Ashe, which I love, which is, from what we get, we can make a living. From what we give, however, makes a life. And Arthur Ashe, one of the greatest tennis players ever to play the game, amazing man, broke a lot of barriers, African-American player, amazing person. But just those kinds of things that remind us. And I think it's, because clearly Felicia is an incredibly positive person. She's surrounded herself with positive things. And sometimes we have to, that little saying, fake it till you make it. Some mornings are easier than others. So we'll start the day, I'm going to have a good day. I'm going to do this. And maybe it's going to take a while to convince ourselves. But again, for all the things that we don't have, there's so many things that we do have. So it's figuring out, how am I going to turn this? What am I going to do with this day? This gift of a day.
And even with that, Suzanne, when you're talking about my network and what I'm surrounded myself with my recovery, with my therapy, I have become a member of Heal Thy Living here in Cumberland County, owned by Anthony and Shantae Hill. And their whole aspect is, I can demand my day to be good. I can start my day out and say, okay, you're going to be a good day. And what am I going to contribute to the fact that you're going to be at a great day? Like you said, is it No Pants Tuesday? That salad, I might not want that salad, but that salad might be a little bit better if I put some strawberries on it. It's what I create. Mm-hmm. Even with buying this house, it was like, why buy a house? It's just you. Why spend the money? But then I was like, why not?
I got my own house. I love it. I love it. The only thing that's funny about it is, working from home, because I will say, the cafeteria is kind of boring. Always the same food there. But however, it's something that's different when it's your own space, when it's you create it, you surround yourself with the things that make you happy. And I remember when I first moved into my house, and because I'd been in apartments for so long, and I was walking around all quietly at 10 o'clock, and I went, I don't have to be this quiet. I could start clogging or dancing around if I wanted to, turn up the music. But it's kind of nice because it's yours. It's your space. You make it your own. You can paint the walls. The best.
And I have, as you see.
Yes. Yep. Little victories. Yes.
All right. Well, I like this positive vibe. Question from Gary Kreitz. If you could go back and tell your 13-year-old self anything, what would you say?
Let me take that one. I would say, do it. Don't let nobody tell you you can't. Do it, do it, do it. You can do it.
Right on. How about you, Suzanne?
Gosh, I'd probably say, as annoying as my younger brother was, I might have tried to have a little more patience with them, although we're really close now. Little siblings are always kind of annoying, but he had, some symptoms going on. So he was a little more challenging to be around. However, I also was his defender on the playground. So I think I probably would turn around, just say to myself that, it's going to get easier. Give it some time. It'll be okay.
Yeah. What gives you hope?
The rising
like this. Yeah. What's that?
The rising of the sun. Mm-hmm. If I get another day, hey.
Each day is an opportunity. I look at things like this where people gather and listen and hear each other. And I hope that people find from this just that ability to say, you know what, I can be just as open with my story as Felicia and Suzanne are. Mm-hmm. And kind of just, of course, when you hit your 50s, you're more like I care what anybody thinks. Shit,
when I tell you that was a magic day, oh my gosh. And I've always heard that, but I mean, it's real. The day you turn 50. But even prior to that, once again, like I said, the nurturing I got at Nami, the nurturing I got at NCCIW. When I tell you, like I said, I never start singing the praises of our chaplaincy department. The chaplaincy department at NCIW treated you, they were like, it's not our job to punish you. And I was treated like a woman. I was addressed as a woman. I was addressed as somebody with feelings. I was addressed with somebody that had a future and that could contribute to society once I got out. And it happened. Somebody held the hope for me until I knew how to hold it for myself.
Mhm. I'm looking at Gail Pruitt's comment in the chat box. You both are wonderful. I'm with you, Suzanne and Felicia, on that. Turning 50 is magical. All right. A lot of empowered women here with us tonight. I'm loving that. So we do have some time for additional questions, members of our virtual studio audience. I want to do some of our announcements real quick since we have just about 10 minutes left. Please join us for our Nami Walk. It's coming right up this Saturday on May 22nd, Nami Walk. There's a Facebook group, the Nami, North Carolina Nami Walk. You can find videos of people giving testimony, sharing their stories, videos of my dog talking about Nami. She's pretty special and talented. Next week on Thursdays with Nami, we've got a really wonderful pair of honor students from Eastern Carolina University. They were given the challenge, an assignment to solve a wicked problem, which is apparently one that's incomplete, contradictory, or has changing requirements. They chose mental health. Bless their hearts. They wanted to focus on high school students who, as they did, are struggling with anxiety and isolation. So they did a bunch of research, they put together a toolkit, and they worked really hard to form a group called AIDS for Anxiety. Join us to hear their perspective and all that they learned. They're wonderful kids. Please fill out our survey. When you leave this Zoom, a survey will magically appear on your screen. It helps us show our funders the value of what we do, and it helps us improve over time. So please fill that out. It helps us out a whole lot. And I still am not seeing questions, but Suzanne and Felicia, if you would like to make a closing statement, you could go ahead and do that.
Well, before my closing statement, I'd like to make an announcement, Peg, if I can. Nami, Cumberland, Harlan, and Lee counties, we're looking forward to our second annual extravaganza of fun for everyone. It will be hosted by the one and only Sunny Kelly, a world-class performer and teacher. That will be June 5th from 6 to 8. There will be poetry, dancing, modeling, singing. Just give us a call at 910-223-5244. Again, that is 910-223-5244. It'll be virtual. It's going to be fun. Come on, join us. Like I said, we have got the one and the only Sunny Kelly.
He is wonderful. He is another force of nature. Suzanne, what do you have for us?
Gosh, I guess just it was a real pleasure to be here and a lot of fun to speak to everyone. And I always appreciate the opportunity to hear other people's stories too. So Felicia, I really appreciate you as well. It was great to meet you because I haven't heard your story. Very moving, very powerful woman.
Thank you, Suzanne. And being in your company makes me even more powerful. Thank you. Thank you. In my closing statement, I like to say that there is such thing as peer power. You can. And nothing can stop you but you.
All right. Just do it. All right. Well, I think we're probably ready to wrap up. Panelists, stop me if you had something additional to say, but I think it feels like we're done. And I want to thank everyone for being with us tonight here on Thursdays with Nami, sharing your story. I just love our two panelists tonight. So thanks to both of you again for sharing your words of wisdom and your beautiful stories. And whatever you do in the week ahead, be sure, go where you need to go, do what you need to do, but be safe. All right, have a great week. We'll see you next week.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks a bunch.